Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new Just No HOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, It's the Great Pumpkin, Vindictive HOA President. I've told a shorter version of this story in the comments, but it's probably worth its own post so we can all hate on HOA some more. I babysat, and elder sat, for the neighbors down the street who committed this malicious compliance, so I was there to hear the ranting as this whole mess went down. We'll call my neighbors Liz and Dave. They were nice folks who ran afoul of the Homeowners Association, HOA, when the busybody president, who lived next door to them, we'll call her Joan, got it in her rotted turnip for a brain that Liz and Dave had taken in an illegal renter. Renting out rooms was strictly against HOA policy. They had not rented out a room. Liz's elderly mother had moved in with them after breaking her hip and being unable to live alone anymore. Joan sent them a very threatening letter about their unlawful renter, and how fines would accrue if the unlawful renter didn't vacate immediately. It was accompanied with a copy of that part of the bylaws and pictures of Liz's elderly mother taken through windows of their house. Creep alert. They wrote back that there was no renter and explained the situation. Joan did not believe that story, and had the HOA lawyer start sending them certified letters about their continued violations with ever-increasing insane fines. This went over poorly. Liz and Dave got their own lawyer to fire back a cease and desist letter. After many increasingly aggressive back and forths, it all culminated in an association meeting where Liz, Dave and Liz's mother came in with ID and birth certificates, and basically made Joan look like the pimple on the backside of humanity she was. They won, but Joan was furious, and swore she'd get them for something. Joan maintained until the day I left for college, last I knew of her, that Liz and Dave had forged those driver's licenses and birth certificates to keep their unlawful renter. Cut to the following fall. Liz and Dave needed to repaint the house after making some siding repairs post-hurricane. They carefully checked the bylaws for approved paint colors and picked out a fairly bland shade of something between brown and tan. They gave the painters the color info listed in the bylaws to the painters and painting happened. Less than a week after their house was painted, they got another certified letter from the HOA lawyer stating their house was the wrong color. They fired back evidence they ordered exactly what was in the bylaws. Well, after many back and forths, it turned out the approved color and the swatches on file with the board no longer matched because the manufacturer had changed the colors in their line slightly due to some kind of formula change. Their house was a few shades darker than it should have been. See, the bylaws listed the manufacturer color info for convenience, but the shades actually had to match the official swatches you could have theoretically borrowed from the board and gotten color matched. Nobody ever did that, but Joan was out for blood after the unlawful renter, and forced them to have to repaint. Liz and Dave were taking no chances on the second try. They got the swatch set from the HOA. For some reason it made no distinction between approved accent colors. Most houses in the neighborhood had brightly colored doors, or house colors. They decided that if they had to paint their house a second time, Joan, the dog that caught the car, could live next to the most garish option they had. It was pumpkin orange. The painters asked multiple times if they were sure. They were very sure. You couldn't see the orange from inside, but you sure could from next door. Joan made many attempts to object to this, but it was within the letter of the HOA rules, and the house stayed orange until long after I moved away. Next one is titled, You Can't Park There, I Won't Be Safe. This story is about a power-hungry HOA president. We will call her Helen. So a little background about my neighborhood. It's basically a long street with a cul-de-sac at the end. Helen lives in one of the 4 houses that encircle the cul-de-sac. So a few years ago, Helen proposed at our monthly HOA meeting that our street is too narrow for emergency vehicles like fire trucks or ambulances to fit through, and she's worried that they won't be able to reach the cul-de-sac houses in an emergency. Which is BS. It's not a through road, so only residents of this small street ever need to use it. Sure, it can be a little tight at times, but two-lane traffic moves comfortably, and it rarely ever needs to because it's a quiet neighborhood street with not much traffic. Fire trucks can and have been accessing the cul-de-sac since the beginning of time. But Helen was on a power trip and she wanted to have one side of the street curb painted yellow to restrict the parallel parking on the street. This move was heavily opposed because it would significantly limit street parking in our neighborhood. Plenty of people raised concerns that there wouldn't be enough parking and this would affect the value of their homes. And since the street parking was first come first serve, it would create undue competition between neighbors in securing a parking spot on our street. But Helen pushed back, saying that safety was more important, being able to find a parking spot. She said there's always plenty of room to park on the cul-de-sac if need be. It shouldn't be an issue. And after much deliberation, we put it to a vote and the motion did not pass. The highly unpopular curb painting would not be happening. Or so we thought. Helen went to the fire department a few days later and voiced her concerns. She told them the neighborhood residents had her support in painting the curb. And on a Monday afternoon, while everyone was at work, they painted the curb yellow. We all came back home that evening to find that our available parking options had been cut in half. People were livid. One neighbor in particular was having none of it. You see, he owned a small boat which he typically kept parked on the street. But now that parking was significantly reduced, he decided he would find a better place for his boat. He waited for Helen to leave for work the next day and parked it right in front of her house on the cul-de-sac, per her suggestion. The look on her face when she came home to find her usual parking space taken over by a boat was almost worth the whole ordeal. And since he rarely ever took his boat out, it stays parked there in front of her house pretty much year-round. At the next HOA election, she was voted out. The next president got the curb painted back to normal, but boat guy still parks his boat in front of Helen's house. All is good in the world. Next one is titled, "You Want to Report Me to the HOA? Be my guest." We were living in a condo complex on the second floor, and my downstairs neighbor was this older couple. The lady had a heart condition, so she was always in and out of the hospital, and I did my best to be respectful of her needs. I have 4 kids, and unfortunately when you choose to live in the ground level unit you have to deal with upstairs noise. I am pretty strict about how my kids play inside, so if there was ever excessive noise it didn't last long. Every now and then lady would text me asking if everything was okay, and it was always just a tantrum. Back in August my husband's maternal grandmother died, and we were not informed, much less invited to the funeral. It's a whole thing. So to help his siblings through their grief we offered to host a lunch for his siblings after they went to the graveside and did a little meeting there. I wanted to clean my porch off because hello, 4 kids are super messy. I texted my neighbor and very politely but firmly said, "Hey, we're gonna be cleaning our porch, so if there's anything you don't want getting wet, move it out of the way." Well, she didn't like that at all, threw a huge fit, and had her husband come up and try to bully us. Her grandkids had drawn in chalk on her patio and we were just gonna wash it all away. How horrible of us. Her husband ends up saying, "We'll just report it to the HOA and deal with it that way." I was so irritated. We ended up not cleaning the porch due to some other circumstances, but they had already sent in their complaint. Next week rolls by and I get a letter in the mail from the HOA basically saying, "You have to keep your porch clean or we will fine you." In comes malicious compliance. I text my neighbor and let her know that we got the letter, and I would be cleaning the porch that day, so she needed to get all her stuff moved. She was all huffy, "Oh no. You can't do that today. I can't move anything. I'll talk to my husband." A while later she texts and says, "He's coming home early to move everything." He's not happy. Gee, I wish we could have done this on a Saturday like I had planned last week. Sucks to suck, lady. It felt so glorious spraying off my porch knowing she was downstairs complaining about it because I could hear her phone conversation. Next one is titled, "Sir, you need to replace your siding." This happened to a friend of my dad's about 3 decades ago. This friend lived in a nicer area of town, and it had a neighborhood association. The association had a set of rules to keep every house looking nice. The friend was contacted by the association because his siding needed to be replaced. In fairness, you couldn't even tell what color it was supposed to be. Since replacing siding is an annoying job, he asked for the order in writing and looked over the rules. Apparently, as long as you make a consistent effort, there's no timeline. In fact, you're only in violation of the rules if you stop working on it for an entire year. So, every summer, he proceeded to put up a single piece of siding. He was still doing it 8 years later when my dad moved away. Next one is titled, "I'll let you know every time I use my garbage can." I've never met anyone that said, "Oh good, an HOA." We all have trash cans, but the sight of them offends the delicate eyes of some, so I complied with the new rule of no seeing bins from the street. I find a notice of my bins being out, which is surprising because I'm the only one who touches the cans and I know I'm 100% compliant. I call in and ask why I got the notice. The full description says, "Bins in driveway with lids off." I asked if this happened to be a Tuesday, and sure enough it was. Wednesday is pickup, and I was doing my weekly cleaning. I was ducking using them, I calmly explained through gritted teeth. "Oh okay, I'll remove the notice." "Great, but how do I prevent this from happening again?" "Oh, I guess notify us." "Alright," I said, "I'll notify you every time I'm using my trash cans." "Oh, that won't be necessary." Clearly it is. That was 5 Tuesdays ago. Today, I once again called promptly at 10 o'clock and let Alan know I was about to use my trash cans. "You know what, Mr. Endoman? I'm just going to put a hold on any trash can notices for you." "Hey, that would be swell, Alan." "That would be swell." Next one is titled, "HOA Representative Delays Apartment Renovations Costing Apartment Its Warranty." So I, 28 male, am in Canada, am working on an apartment in which we have had multiple meetings with the local HOA to get approvals for how the material looks, color, even how it goes together. I work in architectural sheet metal, so I won't throw a whole lot of jargon at you. Anyways, we have been working on this building for about 2 months, made it up to the 6th floor, securing the cap metal with standing seams, wing clip and smash pins, when the HOA representative comes out onto the scaffolding and promptly says, "Take off all the cap flashing. I don't like the standing seams because it runs my view and the views of the residents. Don't you know this is a luxury apartment?" My boss and I both looked dumbfounded, and I said that to the representative, "I'm sorry, but this is a part of local laws on securement of the metal. If you didn't like this should have been brought up during the meeting with the architect, the head contractor. This building is as old as I am, clearly was not built to standard, and if you are a construction worker like I am, you would clearly see it just by looking at the building's concrete." After the HOA representative left, we went to talk with the head contractor, in which he laughed his butt off. Told us not to worry about it since the HOA is already into it for a good $1 million and would cost them another $50K to remove the siding, take out our metal, pay for new metal, install it, then reinstall the siding to get it to the way he wants it. A day later we get a phone call from the owner saying that they are going to pay for it. But the way they want it, absolutely no standing seams, is going to cost the building its 10-year warranty on the metal. Meaning that if anything happens after we leave the building, it's not our problem. Last one is titled, "Oh, I must paint my garage?" Sure thing. A friend of mine lived in a pretty big neighborhood with a pretty strict HOA. He was the first house at the bottom of the hill that you saw when you drive in. He asked and was allowed to add a garage onto his house and did so, siding it with cedar planks. It looked great. His HOA disagreed and told him the bylaws state all exposed walls must be painted. He tried to appeal but was shot down unanimously. So he checked the bylaws further and found that while it was stated that all exposed walls must be painted, there was absolutely no mention of any color restrictions. By the time he was done, each plank was a different primary color and there was nothing they could do about it. They were furious with him and he laughed his butt off. Edit. To answer a few questions. This was back in the early 90s. The HOA was created years after the neighborhood had been established. Maybe they assumed no one would use anything but tasteful colors. I don't know and don't care. I also don't care if you believe the story or not. Using a clear coat, wood-like finish would defeat the purpose of his giant duck you to the whole neighborhood. I said he was a friend, but that's not quite true. He was some guy the first knew through a boyfriend and hung around a lot. He took great joy in being an equal opportunity dick. Thanks for listening.